there's never enough, ever. So when I started thinking about it, it's like, okay, well, I'll just come to terms with that. I'm cool with it. It's good. So how much do I need to live this lifestyle? And we restructured based on that concept. And it was the best thing that we ever did for ourselves.
Welcome to Task Time Energy, the purpose-filled productivity podcast. My name is Scott Miller. I'll be your host. I created this podcast to inspire you to think about how you spend your time, and hopefully to think about that in some new and different ways. We're going to talk with people who've had very successful careers, people who've had unique experiences in life, and we'll ask them to share any time management tips that they might have. We might ask them to share some of the challenges that they've faced and ways that they've overcome those challenges. But more importantly, we're going to ask them how their unique experiences have shaped the way that they think about time. We'll ask them how those experiences have shaped the way they think about being productive, and especially about being productive in a purposeful and meaningful way that adds value to their lives. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Welcome, everyone. We are here today with my very good friend, Matt Kalush. Matt and I have known each other for a long time, haven't we, Matt?
Oh, man. Yeah, probably, I don't know, 2005, maybe, somewhere right in that realm.
Yeah, I was thinking close to 20 years, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, man, time flies, huh?
So Matt is an electrician by trade, has experience running his own business as an electrician. Matt, you've also worked as like a project manager, estimator, worked on some pretty big projects. I know you worked on a project at a major attraction down in Orlando, Florida, one of the big attractions that a lot of people probably heard of. I know you've done some work like major hotel renovations. You were kind of like the troubleshooter, the one who would go in when a project was not going well and you'd kick butt and get everything back on track. So a lot of experience with some pretty serious project management. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head, I guess. You know, I've been in the construction industry basically since high school, and just kind of worked my way through it and found the electrical trade, and, you know, did my apprenticeship, got my journeyman card, got my master electrician's license, and did that for a while, and then kind of went into estimating and project management. And then, yeah, kind of like you said, I did a lot of big entertainment work, and hospitality work. And then just kind of had to try to reprioritize for myself and my family to make sure that I was doing what was right for me and healthy for me and the fam. So yeah, kind of restructured, kind of new chapter of the life, you know?
Yeah. And you've had some really interesting experiences that I think people will be interested in hearing about, like your sail across the ocean to Hawaii on a sailboat. You're living up in Alaska now. And I love the story about how you ended up in Alaska. I remember you saying like the idea that most people kind of just end up in a place because of work or relationship or something. And you and your wife, your now wife, lovely wife, Amara, did something a little different. Do you remember how you were explaining that to me one time? You want to tell people about that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember exactly how I explained it to you, but, you know, basically I was working a very stressful, well, both of us, you know, we're living and working a very stressful life. And we found that the amount of time and energy and effort that we were putting into our careers was really, really impacting our life in a negative way. You know, from working, 12 to 14-hour days, 7 days a week, and just not really being fulfilled in life. So I kind of came up with this idea and just made the decision that, you know what, why don't we just go adventure and see where we want to live? Like there's no reason that we can't live anywhere that we would like to live, within the United States or abroad. So we basically decided we were going to, resign from our positions, liquidate everything we own, buy a travel trailer, and get on the road. So we kind of structured a year and a half plan to where we were going to go see things that we wanted to see in the United States and see people that we wanted to see and family and, and friends and stuff that, everybody gets so busy in life, you kind of lose track of all of that. So that's what we did. So we did a year and a half on the road. We did 42 states, 4 provinces, Canadian. We did the summer in Alaska. So we drove up the Elcan, had a great summer here. And that was kind of on the tail end of that year and a half trip. And we got a little bit of cold feet when we got up here. I'd lived in seasons before, but my wife hadn't. She's basically from Florida. When we were on that year and a half trip, it's what I learned is it was kind of skewed because you're on vacation. And every time you're on vacation, every place you go is awesome. And I mean, everybody does it, right? We're working, we get our 2 weeks vacation or whatever it may be, and you go somewhere or a cruise or whatever, and you're there and you're like, oh man, we should totally move here. This would be the best thing ever. But the reality of that is it's because you're on vacation. You don't have all the stresses and ties and anchors of, where you're actually living and working, right? So we batted around the idea of, let's just stay in Alaska so we can have one more summer here to see if we really enjoy it as much as we did this summer. Well, we got a little scared. And we were broke basically. And we had some family members that were, elderly that we wanted to spend some time with. So it actually took us back to Central Florida. Long and short of it, we ended up being in Florida for a little over 2 years. We had our wedding, which Scott was a big part of, and it was a great time. And our honeymoon was back to Alaska. And I said, you know what, let's just pack up and move to Alaska. We enjoyed it. Let's just go out there and see if that's going to, be the place that we want to be. So I canceled, all the plane tickets for the honeymoon and everything. And the few friends I had up here, I told them, you know what, we changed our mind. We're not coming on the honeymoon. We're moving up. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, I'm packing right now. Like, we're out of here. I mean, it was literally, I think 3 weeks after our wedding, we liquidated everything again, bought a different trailer and, took about 6 weeks to get up here. So we spent some time in South Dakota and a few things that we missed on that last road trip that we did around the country. So we basically chose, this is where we want to live. We're both, have professional careers that fortunately we can find work anywhere. And, if you're willing to work, there's work. But yeah, so that's kind of in the nutshell there, Scott, on how we did that, and why we did that.
Yeah. And I just remember you saying the idea that, you were talking about this idea that normally when we end up living somewhere, it's because we went there for a job or we went there for a relationship, or it's just where we happen to grow up. And you all were very intentional about saying, we're going to travel around and see what it's like to be in different places and make a choice, like an informed choice about where we want to live. Yeah. And I thought that was so cool at the time. And it's really so pertinent now because, with a lot of the shift to remote work, I think a lot of people are looking at making that same choice and that same decision.
Yeah, it's really, the conventional workforce has changed, obviously, so I think the opportunity for people to pursue happiness outside of where they were, raised or where their job initially took them to. I mean, the opportunities now are endless.
You said something really interesting a few moments ago. You said, when you're on vacation, right? And it's really easy to say, oh, this place is great, I want to live here.
Yeah, everybody does.
Yeah, living there can be different. Do you what advice would you have for somebody who says, yeah, I'm going to go check some different places out and see where I want to live? Like, anything that you can say that would be helpful?
Yeah, I think, honestly, the biggest things, for me is look at the things that are important to you. If climate is important to you, Like if you don't like, cold winters, or you don't like the four seasons, or, you love being 90 in 95-degree weather, I think that's a big drive for a lot of people. And then, what other things are important to you? Do you like professional sports? Do you like live music? Do you like diversity in eating out in, all different types of restaurants, from, 1 star to 5 star, or, things of that nature? I think are important, because for me, I grew up in a suburb of Detroit, so we had all the professional sports. Obviously, the rock and roll scene and the music scene is amazing, and all different types of restaurants and all that stuff. So the one thing living up here now is, we've given up most of that. We have like a local hockey team, that plays like low level pro, right? And it's a 2-hour drive if we want to go watch a game, and we have a couple small music festivals in the summer. So I guess the best way to answer that question, Scott, would be, prioritize what brings you happiness outside of work. So if it is like, hey, I love going, and seeing, country music at little dive bars or something. I mean, for me, it was like, I want to get back to outdoors. I want to get back to the seasons. I made my list, and it made sense for me to come on up here. But, there is sacrifices everywhere. Nothing's perfect, right? So I think if you focus on what brings happiness to you, then when you're looking at these places, see if that offers that. And if it doesn't, then it's off the list.
I can think of, for me, moving from, when I was going to college, moving from New Jersey to Daytona Beach, right? And you moving from Detroit down to that area, right?
Yeah.
And you think, wow, it's Daytona and there's the beach and there's all this fun stuff and it's so cool. But if you step back and say, well, wait a minute, there are going to be some things, as fun as Daytona is, there are going to be some things in Detroit that you can't experience in Daytona, that maybe it's the sport, maybe it's the music scene. And I think it's really easy to see the shiny lights and the fun things that we like and the newness of a new place, and not step back and say, hey, wait a minute, what's important to me? And how do I want that to influence my decisions? That's a really great insight.
Yeah, it's kind of like sit down, make the list, right? That old cliche, the good, the bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And piece of paper, and and go at it systematically a little bit, I guess. The one thing I've never been afraid of is work. And I'm a very strong believer, and I always have been, that if you go to work and put an honest day's work in, honest date for an honest day to pay, you will always have a job. And that comforts me, knowing that if I'm going to uproot and go somewhere and try something completely different, I'm confident in the fact that I'm going to be okay financially, because that's why we're working, right? 90% of us. I mean, there's that 10%, I guess. And, those are just numbers I'm making up, that just really, really enjoy their job, right? They just love it, and they do it because it brings them so much happiness. But the majority of people, it doesn't seem like that to me. It seems like they're just doing it because they need to make that dollar bill. So you got to build the happiness in outside of that.
Living in Alaska, so a lot of people are maybe aware of this, but like in the middle of the winter, the sun doesn't really come up. And in the middle of the summer, it doesn't really get totally dark. Like, is that how it is where you are right now?
The area that we live in, our like shortest official, sunrise to sunset time is 4.5 hours.
Wow.
So that gives us, basically in December, right? Third week of December is the switch there. That gives us about 6 hours of usable daylight.
Mm-hmm.
So when I grew up in Michigan, we had roughly about 8.5 hours of usable daylight where I lived there. The big difference is it's like 11 a.m. before it gets light. Mm-hmm. And then it's light till, 6:30ish or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that I think for me in the wintertime, is one of the hardest things, because it's just dark so long in the morning, and mornings for most of us are our most productive time.
Right.
So that is a big challenge for me. So so back to the season thing here, it's manic, like you have the winter time, and if you don't play in the winter here, if you don't snow machine, ice fish, cross country ski, snowshoe, downhill ski, any of that stuff, you're not going to be happy, because it's just not a nice environment, climate. It's quiet. It's a good time to hibernate. It's a good time to self-reflect and, figure out all the stuff you're going to do, the following season. But like right now, here third week April or end April, I haven't even checked, but I bet you we're at like, I don't know, 14 hours of daylight right now. I mean, we're gaining, and I'd have to check the numbers because, it's a sliding scale on how much you gain as you get closer to a solstice or equinox. But we're gaining probably 6.5, 7 minutes a day. So when you think of that, just say 10 days, that's over an hour of daylight in 10 days. So it's extreme to watch, and watching Mother Nature transform how fast and quickly she changes seasons here. It is impressive. But there are places here where you are correct. They don't see the sun for 6 months. You get up above the Arctic Circle.
Right. It's interesting to hear you talk about how people adapt to it, because like people cut down on their outdoor activity in the winter because it's cold and you don't want to be outside. But it's interesting how you talk about being into like, being into snow machines, being into skiing, being into ice fishing, where even though it's like you're accepting the way things are, you're accepting the way the climate is, the way the sunlight is, and looking for ways to be active and enjoy that time of year. And it sounds like that has a really healthy effect, so that the lack of daylight, the long darkness isn't maybe having as big an effect. Do you find that being active that way helps that way?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, if I wasn't an active type individual, or my wife and I, the winters they'd be miserable for us here. I mean, they're just, if you're not getting out and enjoying it, and it's just not worth it, and that's back, kind of circling back to what we were talking about earlier about, where your priorities lie, if you were to relocate somewhere. So yeah, it's for us, it's a lifesaver,
Right.
we enjoy it. And it's a really peaceful, quiet time. It just gives you time to, I don't know, reflect, I guess, a little bit, and, think about what you're doing in your life and what's important to you. And it's not that manic go, go, go summer mentality that we all have, even where you live there, Scott, right?
It sounds like there's a good lesson in there for a lot of us, like the lesson of being active in the winter, right? Like, don't just because it's cold out, don't shut down all your winter activities. Find some winter activities that you enjoy and stay active. And like for me, I kind of look forward to the winter here, because where I'm living, it's windier in the wintertime, in the winter and early spring when it's cold. So like that's the best time for windsurfing.
Sure.
Yeah. So like, and it makes a huge difference for me. I find that, I don't, I'm not sad because winter's coming. I'm not upset because, the warm weather is gone. I mean, yeah, it's different, got to bundle up a little more, but there is something to look forward to. And that activity and that, ability to get outside and enjoy what sunlight there is makes a big difference for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and unfortunately in today's world, I mean, it's real easy just to sit on your iPhone or Android and sit on the couch all winter long and, go down the YouTube rabbit hole or whatever, I mean, so staying active, I think even in the summer, spring, any season, I think it's healthy, it mentally and physically, obviously.
Yeah. And another interesting adventure you had, an experience you had was, and this wasn't too long ago, this is just last year.
This time
you sailed across the Pacific Ocean from Baja California to Hawaii. Tell everybody a little bit about that adventure, because I think people enjoy hearing about that.
Yeah, so it was a unique opportunity. So if you rewind a year prior, I got an invite wife and I got an invite to help move a sailboat from Mexico to French Polynesia. And that was the initial plan. Well, unfortunately for my wife, she couldn't get the time off of work because it was too short of notice, and it's a chunk of time. So unfortunately, I had to make the decision: am I going to go do this passage without her? We talked about it and said, "Yep, let's help our friends move their boat. Let's go for it. It'll be a great life experience." So I went down to Mexico, provisioned the boat, did a whole bunch of boat projects, got everything ready. We checked out of Mexico with customs. So we were leaving for French Polynesia in the morning, and COVID hit. And it's hard to remember how fast all of that COVID restriction and everything happened. But within like 72 hours, the whole world changed.
Yeah.
So, so we made the decision, let's pump the brakes, we'll just go on the boat, we'll go throw the anchor, let's give it 24 hours and see what happens. Well, French Polynesia shut down, air travel started shutting down. It got really crazy. So I had to make one of the most difficult decisions in my life, personal decision, was, am I going to stay on the boat, go with these guys wherever we may go now, or am I going to go home and be with my wife? So I stepped off the boat and pushed them off and, hey, see you guys later. And it was a very difficult decision for me. But I made the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
So go fast forward another year, they said, hey, we really want to do a passage. French Poly and going that way right now is still very dynamic with COVID. So we're thinking maybe we'll just go to Hawaii because, obviously it's, still within our country. So fortunately for us, we had enough time to where my wife, Amara, and I could both make the trip. So it worked out really well. We flew down to Mexico and met our very dear friends, Steve and Jen, and, provisioned the boat, kind of did some boat projects. And it was basically like, I think it was a 21-day sail. And it was an experience. Definitely an experience of a lifetime for sure. The Pacific is a big, big, big body of water. And it is very deep, and there's nothing out in the middle of it. I think we saw maybe when you get out of sight of land, off the mainland coast, we might have saw 50 birds. That was it. Yeah. There's nothing out there, but the blueness of that ocean and the peacefulness, it was very special. And we got extremely lucky. We didn't have any issues. Steve and Jen had the boat top-notch condition, all the gear, rigging, everything. We didn't hit any major weather. Not to say we didn't have big water or, rain squall come through or something like that, but we didn't have any tropical issues or any big storm systems that were life threatening. There was a few that we were monitoring, but they never came to fruition and came our way. So yeah, it was a very, very cool experience, and I would recommend it to anybody. I don't know if most people could do that long, and I don't know if I would want to do that long again. But I would say, that week to 10 days to 14 days would probably be about the perfect time. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of companies out there that offer, vacations like that. And it'll change you. I'll put it that way. You got no phone, really no technology, unless you, get sat phones or things of that nature. But yeah, it was quite the experience.
We're going to pause the conversation here. I like to keep the length of these episodes at around 30 minutes, but we're definitely not done with this conversation. I hope that you've enjoyed listening so far just as much as I enjoyed having this conversation with Matt. In part 2, Matt will tell us about ways that his experiences have shaped his ideas about time and how they influenced his leadership style, and some important decisions that he and his wife have made about the way that they choose to live and work. So definitely join us for part 2 of this episode. Matt has some great insights to share. In the meantime, if you would like to add some new healthy habits to your routine, if you want to be more active and find more ways to enjoy life throughout the whole year, even in winter when the days get shorter and colder, these are exactly the kinds of changes that I help people make in their lives through my work as a certified professional coach. You can learn more on my website, scottmillercoaching.com.